Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of November 12th, 2023, a date of marriage of 2006. She is a clinging boomerang who is a low-energy wallower. And this is a question I have not received before. She says, HeartsBlessings book states that many MLCers are emotionally bound to their parents. Still, and this is one issue they need to resolve in midlife crisis. My spouse immigrated to the U.S. from Asia when he was a child. His parent, and he is the parent of he is an only child. Since childhood, his parents have verbally and physically fought with each other, and they stonewall each other for months. They moved closer to us a few years ago and started having my husband as the moderator. And I assume that as a child, when they stonewalled each other, that was also what was going on. So this was probably a natural dynamic for him to fall into. So he's now started having him as the moderator to their fights. 20 months ago, they started to seem dead set on divorce for themselves, but they proceed slowly. I believe this was a trigger for my husband, and that's when I noticed in hindsight the downhill slide to bomb drop. He talks divorce, and we're about to start divorce mediation. Since April of 2024, he spends up to 5 nights a week at his parents'. We have 2 children. While there are still other aspects to his midlife crisis, this seems to be a main point, and I believe this is why he pushes for our divorce. Can this be true? How do they resolve the parental issue? Note, my spouse is in therapy. That's good. I'm glad he's in therapy. Why the pull to stay with his parents? So since this is a question I haven't seen, and I actually haven't seen this issue, I understand HeartsBlessings saying that we are still emotionally bound to our parents, but it's not an issue I've seen. And it's not something we talk about as a main thing. I can't say specifically. So let's go over some things. First, the first thing I want to talk about is he immigrated to the U.S. from Asia when he was a child. So if there are anyone who is Asian culturally that is watching this that has some insight into that culture, that can provide some insight, please comment and into the parental child dynamics, because there might be some differences just there in what is expected of children and what is expected of adult children, and how that may or may not differ, and how that differs when you are then brought up in a different country versus if you are brought up and may stay in your Asian country, versus if you come to the U.S. and how that differs. So now you're culturally in the U.S., so you're kind of in 2 worlds. And so how do the expectations stay the same and change? So I would very much expect him to go back to this codependence that he had as a child, being the moderator between them. So how I am going to approach this is I'm going to try and look into it from his point of view. Okay, so I want you to do that with me. Let's go into this thought experiment for a few moments for this video. So dive into his shoes, and his parents have just moved home. And this is going to bring up a crisis in him a little bit, because now he sees them. He sees their bickering. He sees their stonewalling, and he sees his own relationship. And it scares him. Do I want this to be what I have? Is that what I have? Maybe he sees himself in his father or his mother, or he sees you in his mother. Maybe he sees some of the patterns playing out, and that scares him. Or he sees some of the patterns playing out in his children that he doesn't want. Oh no, I didn't want my daughter or my son to experience those things, or to be like I was, to have to do that. This is why I moved away, or this is why I didn't want that. And those things scare them. And if he's seeing any of those things that he didn't want happening, even though, now you might be confused when we say all these things that he didn't want happening, because he's now staying with his parents and he's mediating and moderating them. That part, those are separate things, okay? And I'm just assuming. But these are some of the things that we cycle through our brains when we're doing these things. He didn't want that life for him as an adult that his parents have, and he didn't want that life for his children. But the other thing we do when we think about some of those, I didn't want that life for them. Sometimes we also say, but that is the life I ended up with. So maybe I don't know how to escape it for myself, but I can escape it for everyone else. I can escape it for everyone else by breaking apart the life we have. And I can go there. It's what I have. It's already who I am. And so maybe, I don't know. I have no idea, and I hope not. I have to give into it. It's all I know how to be. It's all I know how to do. They expect me. I have to do it. From some of what I have seen of Asian culture, it seems like there's a lot of accommodation. You are expected to play a role in a family, aren't you? There's family placement. And I could be completely wrong. It could be just stereotyping. So I apologize if that's what I'm doing. But this is what you're supposed to do. And he's told he's supposed to play this role. And if that's the case, he has an expectation. And is he chastised if he's not doing that? And told he's being a bad child, bad son? And what are they doing to him? Why is he staying there? Is he staying there to help prevent them from divorcing? Does he feel the burden of keeping his parents together? I don't know. Have you talked to him? What has he said about that? Does he feel that he has to save his parents' marriage and sacrifice his own? His parents' marriage falling apart, and it sounds like it was a marriage that always struggled. Always had conflict, whether it was a high conflict or just had conflict and struggles and some levels of toxicity. There was always an undercurrent, and that affected him, didn't it? And he brought it into his own life, and he didn't want to, and he didn't know how to stop it, and now he avoided it, and then it came up now. When they moved close, it brought it back into his life. He is hoping he could save them. But if he can't save both. If he can't save them, if he can save them, he can't save you. And maybe he can lose both. I don't know. But this is causing an absolute existential struggle in him, that he can't help his parents and he has to help them. And I think there's probably a cultural expectation from them that he's supposed to be with them, and that he has to go to them, especially as an only child. I'm an only child. I have a half brother that's off in another state. But for my mom, I'm an only child. And in some ways, I thank goodness that she has taken on a roommate that is my own, close to my age, that she's become very close to, that helps her out and is taking on some of the role that I would do. Because that has really relieved a lot of the burden. Because I have 5 kids, and my mom is getting older. She's not going to be around a lot longer. And I don't have the means to go take care of her house and other things. But her roommate is in the house and will be there and has been set to take that responsibility. And I'm so blessed. And so thank God. We've talked about that. And if it were on me to do that, because it would be on me or my uncle, because we're the only ones left. And I wouldn't feel that it would be fair to give it to him. And so your husband might feel that same level of burden. And since they immigrated here, it's just him, isn't it? And if it were just on me, of a strain that would put on my marriage, because we're not local in town, I would have to leave, even though it's only a few hours. It's about 3 to 5. With Chuck's anxiety, he wouldn't be able to handle 5 kids. I get your husband's possible anxiety over this and his parents, and what do I do? My parents are struggling. Just that burden on itself, my aging parents. How old are they? You know, my mom just had a, I don't know how terminal a diagnosis, but a diagnosis that wasn't great. And she still works because she has to. And that's really hard. So what he's going through is, I'm losing my parents. My parents are breaking up. They're fighting. And it's my responsibility. And so what am I going to sacrifice? What am I giving up? And yeah, we're emotionally bound. We are emotionally bound to our parents. And he feels emotionally responsible. And I have a feeling he's been told that he's emotionally responsible. And when parents stonewall, that's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse from John Gottman. That signals divorce. Stonewalling. And it sounds like they have been emotionally divorced then, even if they haven't been officially and legally divorced. He feels he has to come between. He has to be the rescuer of each parent and moderate and mediate between them. Like the good little boy, doesn't he? But if you're that for them, what are you for your own family? You fail them, don't you? And that's a big burden to carry, and he can't carry all that on his shoulders. And it's breaking him. So, is he talking about those things in therapy? It is way too much burden. And so, it's a big thing for you to carry as well. But I want to know if each one of you has thought about what the burden of the other one is. Because if you're not aware or even considering the burden of the other one, then we're walking around and not realizing how crippled the other one feels. How much the other person feels like they're sitting in, maybe like how depressed and anxious they are. And the way I think of this sometimes is like they're sitting alone in a closet, huddled in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, going like this. I just can't do it anymore. Like that. But because they don't want to admit to it, they put on a face and you don't know it. And how different would you feel if you knew it? If your spouse came to you and said, honey, I'm struggling. Not struggling in the marriage, but before that, if they'd said, you know what, I'm having a really tough time with this. And there's, you know, can you do this for me today? Like, can you just do the laundry today? Or can you, I can't, there's dishes and there's laundry and there's this bill. Could you take over the bill? Or could you take over this chore? But they don't. And so they sit there and they start shaking because there's too much, because they do all this and you do all these ones and neither of you tell each other. And maybe that's part of it. He's carrying a burden that he hasn't talked about. And his parents, he's moderating and mediating. And it's his responsibility, and he feels this responsibility because they've told him. But how much has he told you? And if he hasn't told you, how much have you been able to surmise? Maybe you have. And if you've been able to surmise, if you have you talked to him about it? And if you've talked to him about it, has he stonewalled you? Or has he been able to go, How does she know? I don't know. Like I said, I'm just spitballing here, okay? So those are the thoughts I have just running through my head. And I could be wrong, I could be right. But think about it, okay? I hope that's helpful. Some helpful thoughts, let me know. Okay, so I hope those are helpful. And this was the only question I received in several weeks, so please keep them coming because I got this morning and just recorded it. I'm going to try and put it out as soon as I can. And I will record as soon as I can the next time, but it is Christmas week. So have a Merry Christmas, everybody, and I'll see you when I can.